Hey there YouTube! So, about 7 or 8 years ago I created a tutorial on how to start with XNA. Now XNA doesn't exist quite in the same form nowadays as it did about 8 years ago. Instead, nowadays you use Monogame if you were into XNA. Monogame is an open source kind of version that utilizes XNA and still makes you able to use that library in case you if that's your preferred way to doing it. It's changed a lot since it's not now only for like Windows and Xbox. It's now kind of cross-platform, so you can create your games and it'll be a bit easier to make it available for Linux and Android and such. So I personally really like working with C# and I like XNA and in now Monogame instead. So this is gonna be just the really, start of Monogame. I'm thinking of making a few tutorials, and I better have a video that explains sort of how you get to the first steps of Monogame. So what I aim to do right now is just tell you what to do to get started and like maybe draw a picture on the screen. So first of all, you have your browser, you open it up and you type in Monogame. Now this browser searches automatically, so should Chrome and Firefox, but if it doesn't, go to Google and just write Monogame. I would go to downloads, and here you can see all the versions of Monogame that has come in the past and the most recent one. Now I would advise you, in case of this tutorial, to go for the Monogame for Visual Studio option and install it, and you would get the project files that you need and all the rest of the things you need. So in case you have any problems with these steps, I would suggest that you Google the questions you have and just search for an answer. Most likely I won't be able to answer everyone in a comment section, and it's also good programming skills to kind of find your answers. But I'll try if I see any kind of questions that I know the answer to. But basically you click here, and if it doesn't work with installing and you notice something that's wrong, try to find the answer on the Googles, and I'm sure you will be able to continue on. But it should be pretty simple and no problems there. So you download that, you install it. There's no real difficult questions that the installer asks you, just install it somewhere. And eventually you will have to open up your Visual Studio that you have to have, basically if you go with that, in case for this tutorial at least, you are required to have Visual Studio. So what you do here is you create a new project. Also, I'm using 2015 Professional. You don't absolutely have to have exactly that version, but I would suggest that you have Visual Studio 2015, but you could probably do this with Visual Studio Code or something. I haven't really tested. If you test it out and it works or it doesn't work with the Visual Studio Code or some other version, hey, put it in the comments and we'll see if there are any answers or anyone else can find answers to in your comments. So you start with Monogame, and I'll make a Windows project because I'm running Windows and I'm going to make this for a Windows platform. So let's call it YouTube game project or something. And we're basically ready to just test this out. So I press F5 here to just kind of start the whole thing, and we are greeted with an application that shows a blue screen. It's a good start. So let's get that texture onto the screen. So first off, something I usually do at least is we have this game 1, and it's a kind of a as you are getting this first class that is derived from game, or it inherits game, which is basically an XNA game, Microsoft XNA Framework game. So I want to rename this. So I usually go here and I rename, and I call it perhaps YouTube game. And it asks if I want to rename all the references, and I say yes. So now we have a YouTube game that inherits game. In our program.cs is where the first method gets called when you execute this program. It runs this bit of code. So it creates a YouTube game and it just tells it to run. So if we go back here, also we don't have to have that open. I have no idea what it thinks I changed. Let me check again. What, I don't know. I didn't change anything, but maybe it added something when I went in there, like maybe it changed a bit of the formatting. So in order to draw something on screen, now I will do something that might not be very Monogame / XNA-ish. They want you to use the content pipeline. Content pipeline is a separate tool. It kind of puts, you have this separate tool where you load in all your resources like textures, audio and all that. And you tell the application to generate kind of a content file, and it'll generate this content MGCB, or rather you open this content MGCB and put things into it and then just save it. And it'll sort of mesh them all into one file. And you can do this yourself manually, and I would suggest out of a programming practice kind of to do that. So what I'm going to do is delete that, because I've had quite a lot of problems with the content pipeline. Now, I would suggest as well, go read up on it. There's a lot of information on it on the Monogame forums and such. It's not my favorite thing to use though. So what I do instead is say that I have a bit of graphics that I want to place on the screen. I'm going to take one of my drawings here, one of my crappy pixel arts, Space Island, and the first thing I will do right now, and this is not like the end product, like you wouldn't do this exactly like this for the end product, but this is a first step to just get something on the screen. So I'll copy to output directory, copy always. So this space island.png will be copied to wherever my game, program, etc. is copied to. So it'll have that file somewhere under a folder called content. So now when I want to load content, I need to load this space island texture, else it won't know how to, like, what it should draw. But I need to save that texture somewhere. So first off, you need to create a texture 2D, because we're making a two-dimensional little testing thing here. I'll call it, no, I was going to type something completely different. I didn't choose a Sterling, I chose a space island. So I'll call it space island, maybe space island texture. So the first thing you see here is a lot of methods that get called automatically. We could actually take away this, because I've removed the content MGCB file. We're not using their content pipeline system in this tutorial, so I'll just remove that. Initialize is called automatically. You can actually read all these. I usually take them away, but initialize is something that gets called immediately after constructor is done. And load content loads any kind of graphics, but we have to tell it what to load. So here I will have to do something like this: space island texture. Let's see, texture 2D has a method called from stream, and here I can do file open, and it doesn't know what file is, so I'll have to, in Visual Studio, press Control period, and it'll suggest something with whatever problem you're having. And it says here in the first one, using system IO, which is the one I want. So I press enter, it adds using system IO up here, so it can use file. I say file open. It wants me to give it a path, so I'll write content / space island.png. And we can actually use open read to open this. Now there's still one thing wrong, and it's because this one takes two parameters, graphics device. And as you can see above here, graphics device is something we have readily available. Graphics device, it's something that comes from the game class. As you can see, game.graphicsDevice. Now, on load content, it will load this texture into this little variable. Now we want to draw it on the screen. So update is where we put all our logic. Right now, all it does is it checks, oh, did player index 1 press the back button? or is escape pressed, then exit the game. So, but here down here we have the draw function, and this is where we put in our draw. So in order to draw something in 2D here, we need a sprite batch. And we have a sprite batch already created for us, very convenient. So sprite batch, it creates a new one here in load content, very nice. So what you do is you take sprite batch, you tell it to begin, because you need to open a sprite batch before you put stuff in it. It's like a little box of sprites, sort of, or box of drawing commands. So you take sprite batch and you begin. Now you can call this without parameters, and it has default parameters. I would suggest going with these immediate, and you can read up on why, or you can read up on these, and maybe in some future video I'll go through them a bit. But right now we're just gonna go with blend state alpha blend, so we use the alpha channel, and sampler state point wrap, so we don't get any kind of anti-aliasing or things like that. We want to draw lovely pixels, and then end to stop the sprite batch. Inside here we put draw. We need it to tell it a texture, so we give it the space island texture that we have loaded up here. And instead of a rectangle, I want to give it a vector 2 position. So you could do a new vector and tell it 10 pixels x and 10 pixels y, and we would not get it like in the top left corner. You can also give it vector 2.0, which will create a vector 2 of x0 and y0. So the vector 2 is a 2-dimensional point that has a horizontal and a vertical kind of value, which is used for the here in sprite batch draw to know where on the screen it's going to draw it. So we draw it in the top left corner, which is 0, 0. The longer to the right, the more x increases, and the longer downwards, the more y increases. So if you want to draw something in a like somewhere more to the top, to the right, bottom right, you would increase both of these values and create something like a new vector 50-50. And then you can choose a color, and it says it's a color mask, and basically you go with white in order to just draw it as it is, unchanged. And that's all we do. And now if I press F5, hopefully we get our texture in the top left corner of the project. And that's about it in order to start kind of doing something. Of course, there's a lot more to be done. You can do a lot of different things from here on out. And I'm going to make a few episodes where I just go through the easy, like my easy ways of kind of just putting up a beginning game. And you know, we all have different ideas of what game we want to do, so everyone will have to go different directions at some point. But anyway, if you liked the video, I would love if you rated it. If you have any comments about anything regarding this video, please put it down in the comments, and consider subscribing. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.